Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you very much. Well, we'll see what happens with China. We have lost $375 billion in trade deficits. They have a surplus of $375 billion with a B with the United States. And it's been that way for years and years and years. I always say we rebuilt China. They took that money and they built fighter jets and they built bridges. They built more bridges than we built in the last 100 years, probably, big ones, like the George Washington Bridge, like big bridges. And I'm not going to take, look, I don't blame China. I blame our leadership. They should have never let that happen. And I told that to President Xi. I said, I was making a speech in China, and I was really hitting China hard. And I'm in China. I don't know if that's a good thing to do. But I looked at it and I said, but I don't really blame you. I blame our leadership for allowing this to happen. He knew exactly what I meant. Expanding plants. I don't think there's any industry like what's happened to steel in the last 9 months, 10 months since I really started doing what I'm doing. It's been really pretty amazing. We had no deal with China. I asked one of the top people in China, a representative at the highest level, came to the Oval Office. I said, let me ask you, how did this ever happen? He's a pro, so he understands. He doesn't have to be cute. He said, nobody ever did anything from the United States. When we put on a 25% tariff on every car that comes from the United States into China, we thought we would be rebuked. We thought it would be terrible. Nobody ever called. Nobody did anything. That was years ago. And we charged them nothing, 2.5%, but we don't collect it. We do now, by the way, but we don't collect the 2.5%. And that gives us a tremendous advantage in negotiating that we never used before with past administrations. We have a tremendous problem with theft of intellectual property with China. We have a lot of other problems with China. We have primarily trade problems. And as you know, they're having a much more difficult time now. I don't want them to have a difficult time. And we're doing better than we've ever done.
Mr. President, you have described India right now as a tariff king. Can you explain it a bit later?
Well, India charges us tremendous tariffs. India charges us tremendous tariffs when we send Harley Davidsons, motorcycles, other things to India. They charge very, very high tariffs. And I've spoken to Prime Minister Modi, and he's going to reduce them very substantially. Nobody ever spoke to these people. He said, nobody ever spoke to me. In other words, we've had leaders here. I'm not, trying to be overly dramatic. We've had presidents of the United States and trade representatives. They never spoke to India. Brazil's another one. That's a beauty. They charge us whatever they want. So if you ask some of the companies, they say Brazil is among the toughest in the world, maybe the toughest in the world. We don't call them and say, hey, you're treating our companies unfairly. You're treating our country unfairly. So India is a very, very high, they really charge tremendously high tariffs. On motorcycles, it was 100%. So you send a motorcycle into India, there's a 100% tariff. Now, that's so high that it's like a barrier. In other words, who's going to buy it? Costs you so much. Now, they've already reduced that substantially, but it's still too high. My relationship with India is great, with Prime Minister Modi is great, and they're going to start doing a lot. They've called us to make a deal. We didn't even call them. They called us to make a deal.
If you take that,
let's go.
You'll take that now?
No.
Okay. Well, the question I have
on
trade, does this mean the end of tariffs? If you could spell that out.
The steel is staying where it is, and aluminum. But it means we probably, for the most part, won't be having to use tariffs unless we're unable to make a deal with a country. For instance, if we can't make a deal with the European Union, we will respectfully put tariffs on the cars. The United States will take in billions and billions of dollars into its coffers. Isn't that nice? Because you don't hear that.
Only from Carl Sagan.
Okay, yes, Sagan. But it'll take in billions and billions of dollars. But really what's going to happen is they'll make the cars in the United States. This way they don't have to pay the 25 or the 20% tax.
And could you spell
So I don't think you're going to have to use the tariffs too often, but there will be cases where you have countries that are just absolutely not willing to do what's fair and reciprocal, and in that case they'll pay tariffs. And you know what? The United States will do very well. No, why don't you just, we'll do the Kavanaugh questions. I mean, You talk about being treated